Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jesse. We appreciate all you guys coming out here today. And I should probably grab the clicker. That'll make the presentation go a little easier. So once again, I'm Arte, the co-founder and CEO of Dashbot. We're excited to have all you guys here today. Dashbot is an analytics platform for conversational interfaces. And when we say that, we really mean anything that could be more text-based, like a web-based chatbot or a Facebook chatbot, or voice, like Alexa or Google Home. As Jesse mentioned, we're big believers in conversation. We really view this as the future. If you remember all the videos of 2-year-olds where they're swiping on the iPhone or the iPad, the same thing happens with devices like Alexa or Google Home. Kids already know how to interact. In fact, Jesse has 2 little kids, and they know how to run up and say, Alexa, play Star Wars, Alexa, play the Happy Dance. They know how that works. What got us really excited is the data is so much more richer and more actionable than, say, web or mobile. It's all unstructured. Users can say or send whatever they want to these devices. They may not respond, but you can say whatever you want. And it leads to some pretty interesting actions you can take, like a live person takeover if something was going sideways. We enable brands and developers to increase user acquisition, engagement, and satisfaction through actionable insights and tools. We're almost 3 years old, and we process more than 67 billion messages across more than 17,000 chatbots and skills. And we wanted to share some of the data that we're seeing across all these. So I want to ask you guys, do you know what the most common message someone says to a Facebook chatbot is? It is. It's hi. So things like hi and hello, this makes sense. It's conversation. When you're talking to a person, you start out by saying hi and hello. The interesting thing, though, is when we look at the responses, there's still about 30% of the bots that get hi don't respond with any form of greeting back. In fact, we had a meetup where someone asked us to test out their bot, and the very first thing I did is typed in hi, and it came back saying, I don't know what you're asking me. There are other messages, though, that are just as important. Things like help. This is still a new space, and people don't necessarily know how the bots work or skills work. So providing some form of help can actually be helpful. And it turns out about half of the bots that get asked for help don't respond with anything remotely close to helpful. Similarly, something like stop. About 60% of the bots that get the message stop also don't respond in any way close to stopping, whether it's stopping or asking if the user wants to unsubscribe. And providing support for stop can be the difference between a lost user and a retained user. So we have a customer who sends out sports scores, and they found out when fans of a team that was losing were getting these sports scores, they would get upset, and they'd end up blocking the bot. So this company paid to acquire the users, and then they'd get upset, they'd block the bot, so they had to pay to reacquire them. And they saw that in the analytics, so they added a mute functionality, and that meant they were able to retain that user. But users aren't just saying hi and hello, they're saying ciao and bonjour and hola and all different other ways people say hello. In fact, these are some of the more common languages we see in Facebook chatbots. So outside of English, there's the Romance languages, but there's Arabic, there's Russian, there's Mandarin, we see all those things. And users aren't just sending text, they're sending images too, or emoticons. These are the more common ones we saw over the past year. The interesting thing with the thumbs up, there's a really popular food delivery company where the thumbs up was actually breaking their chatbot. Users would order the food, they get really excited, they do a thumbs up, that broke the bot, the company never got the order, the user never got the food, no one had any idea until looking at the analytics. Similarly, people don't just send in stickers and emoticons, they do send images in. And do you know the most common image folks send into a Facebook chatbot? It turns out it's the selfie. So users are sending selfies into chatbots. And you can see here the tags person, human, people. Those all relate to selfies. And then if we separate male versus female, you start to see guys taking photos of cars and motorcycles and vehicles. And women still skews heavy to selfies. But one of them came up that we thought was interesting, electronics. And do you know why women are taking photos of electronics? It's when you do a selfie in the mirror, the mirror captures the phone and tags it as electronics. So when we first did the study, I thought the images were going to be quite a bit different than this. It turns out people do send naked selfies to chatbots. Luckily, it's only about 1 or 2%, but when they do it a lot. A normal image is sent in once. The average naked selfie is sent in almost 5 times. So there's some weird hurdle you get over that you feel this is okay to do, you just keep doing it. And one guy, in the data we pulled, he did it 266 times. But what about voice? What are the more common messages in voice? What are we seeing here? I think a lot of you probably know Alexa doesn't provide the raw utterance. So what we did is we looked at Google Voice to see, or Google Actions to see that as a proxy for voice. What are people saying on these devices? And so the more common messages we see in voice are things like the polar responses, yes and no. You still see the highs and hellos, and then a lot of control functions like stop and repeat. But users don't just say yes and no. They say yes, 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 no, 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 no. So it's interesting to look at this stuff and make sure you're handling these things correctly. All the control functions are actually quite interesting. It's important to look at what people are saying to your action, especially things like stop. If someone was to ask me about Dashbot in an email, I would send a sentence or two describing us. But when I made an Alexa skill and it started reading that, a few words into it, I was like, stop, 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 this is too long. So we often hear folks, when they're building their skill, they'll have someone act out the other part, like act out the Alexa, act out the Google Home, so you can see what that interaction's really like and try to make it a bit more concise. Users aren't just saying the one word stop and repeat. They say everything from turn it off, shut it off, all the way up to the ever popular shut the F up. One of the other interesting findings we found is users often don't realize they're still inside the third-party skill. They're asking for default functionality of the device, to play music, what time is it, what's the weather. Part of this could be from the development itself. When you're building your skill or action, when you send a response back, you can end the conversation or you can leave it open to see if the user says something more. And perhaps some of these developers are leaving it open when it doesn't necessarily need to be left open. Related to that is users trying to get back to the device, like take me back, get me back to the Google Assistant. They realize they're in the third-party skill, they're trying to get out. Again, it's worthwhile looking at these things because you might be frustrating your users, and how can you better handle that? One of the things we often joke about is the devices don't understand us. It's interesting to see sometimes the users don't understand the device and asking for the messages to be repeated. The other one that was kind of a surprise is that users can be surprised. We ran a survey, which we'll talk about in a second. One of the things that users said is they're very surprised by how much these devices actually knew and how well they did understand users. And so you can see it here, both positive and negative surprise. In terms of sentiment, the beauty of conversational interfaces is users tell you exactly what they want and what they think of the device or the interface after. And here you see everything from the I love you all the way to F off. So you see those ranges of what people really think about your skill. So I mentioned we did a survey. So we surveyed users to see how often they use these devices and whether their behavior changing or not. And so it turns out almost 60% of the users or owners use the device multiple times a day. Another 15% or so use it at least once. So it's nearly 3/4 are using these devices at least once a day. We asked if it was behavior changing or not. And again, it's about 2/3 find that these devices are behavior changing. The interesting thing with the no's, the 19% that said no, it wasn't behavior changing, 33% of those use the device multiple times a day. Another 17% use it at least once a day. So 50% of those no's are using the device once a day, at least once a day, and they're saying it's not behavior changing for them. These are some of the more popular categories or use cases. It's listening to music, checking weather, getting general information. If we separate this male versus female, those top three are still about the same. Women are maybe 5 or 6% higher than men in some of those. There's some stereotypical ones you see with sports. More men are looking at, or listening, or asking for sports than women. The other one that stood out was shopping. More guys are doing shopping than women. And so we want to dive a little bit deeper into shopping, or doing commerce through your Alexa or Google Home. It turns out a little over 40% of owners have made a purchase through their device. It tends to be from the store itself, so either from Amazon or Google Shopping. That's about 80% of the purchases. About 50% were food delivery, and it's often a reorder case. It's a little bit easier to do in voice, the reorder, rather than build a whole order from scratch. And when we talk to these food delivery companies, it's fairly common. People are creatures of habit. They order the same thing over and over, so the reorder case is quite popular. We also asked folks whether they were likely to make a purchase in the future or not, and it's fairly positive. About 40% said they're very likely, another 20% said somewhat likely. If you made a purchase in the past, about 75% of those are very likely to do it again. But do you know what the biggest indicator is and whether someone has made a purchase or is very likely to make a purchase in the future? It's whether you own both devices or not. Oh, this is actually really interesting. For the folks that have made purchases in the past, about 60% of them own both an Alexa and Google Home, compared to a low 40% if you just had an Alexa or Google. And then in terms of the likelihood to make a purchase in the future, it's very similar, 60% if you had both versus like low to mid-30s if you just had one. And it could be because if you have both, you're an early adopter, and perhaps early adopters are more likely to make purchases through these devices. We also found men, as we mentioned before, they use this a bit more, and they're a little bit more likely to make purchases through the device. We also asked users just in general whether they were happy with their devices, were they satisfied with the device understanding or responding, and for the most part they are. About 45% are very satisfied, another 30 or somewhat, so 70 to 80% are satisfied with these devices. In fact, when we asked them to rate the device on a 1 to 5 scale or 1 to 5 star rating, they got about a 4.4 rating. One of the things that came out from the survey, though, is discovery is still a problem. It's still a challenge. Less than half of the folks have used 1 to 3 skills. Another 14% haven't used any. What we found is people don't even know that they're called skills. When we said, how many skills you used, the first response is, well, what are skills? I didn't know you called them that. And then Google's changed the name a few times, so it's made it a little tricky there. But in terms of how users find the skills, social media tends to be the top way. And we hear that from brands and developers, too, that any form of social media, paid or organic, tends to work pretty well. In fact, video influencer campaigns, we've heard positive things about, partly because the influencer has reach, but also because they show you how to use the skill, and folks might not actually know that. So diving a little bit deeper into skills, we looked at the ratings. There's more than 60,000 Alexa skills. The majority don't have ratings. 65% don't have ratings. And then the 1-star and 5-star reviews are primarily from 1 rating. Like 80% or so of the 1-star reviews are from 1 rating. Another 60+% of the 5-star ratings are from 1. So if we remove all those 1-star ratings, we start to see a distribution appear. But it turns out 90% get less than 5 ratings. So if we pull those out, a clear distribution starts to appear in the high 3s. 95% of the skills get less than 15 ratings, so we even did it one more time. So these are the top 5% of the skills, how they rate. In terms of popularity, just in the sense of how many skills there are out there, games is by far the biggest category. But based on the ratings themselves, business and music tend to get higher ratings, the 4.1 or 4.2, versus home automation's a bit lower. Alexa also provides their own recommendations, and these tend to do better. On average, these are about 3.9 stars versus a 3.5 of the others. So one of the areas that we're really excited about today is customer service chatbots. When we first started, there was a lot of interest around Facebook chatbots. That shifted to voice, and it's shifting again to these customer service web-based chatbots. So we ran a survey to both enterprises with chatbots as well as users of the chatbots, and we wanted to share some of the insights we found there. So first, the enterprises are still primarily live agents. About half of the enterprises we talked to only had a live agent. In terms of chatbots, only about 20% had just the chatbot. There's another 30 that had both. But the interesting thing is almost 75% are looking to build a chatbot in the next year, with more than 40% looking to build a chatbot in the next 3 months. And so we asked, why are they building a chatbot, or why do they have a chatbot? And part of the reason is to provide 24/7 support. But the interesting thing was they want to provide a better user experience and improve customer service, and do that with a chatbot. So we took a look at what folks are doing right now with their either live agents or chatbots. And it turns out the general FAQs and product help, those are the more common use cases that the enterprises are building for. And then when we talk to end users, those are also the more common use cases that they've used these interfaces for. But we ask users, what do they actually like better, a live agent or a chatbot? And so while today folks still prefer the live agent for a lot of the things, we're starting to see with like order delivery status or the general FAQs, the chatbots are either they prefer better or on par with the live agents. And these are opportunities to make the chatbots better so that folks are actually satisfied and like using the chatbots. When we asked enterprises what they really cared about, what were the top like KPI things they would track against, the top was user satisfaction. They want to make sure the users are satisfied. They also want to make sure the chatbot understands what the user's asking so it can respond appropriately, like improving the NLP. And then lastly, reducing the escalation. And the first two can help with the latter. When we asked users how they felt about working with the chatbots, they're still fairly positive. Obviously, the availability is what they really like, but even all these other things, the ability to understand or respond appropriately, it's still positive. It's about 40 to 50% positive versus 20 to 30% negative across these. But we asked users, what do they actually like about a chatbot? So the 24/7 availability, the speed of response, the ease of use, and the 24/7 availability goes right back into what enterprises are looking for. We also asked them what they don't like, and so the inability to understand, respond appropriately, respond with the correct answer, these are all opportunities to improve these chatbots. Using an analytics tool, you can see what people are asking, go back and improve your NLP, and hopefully lead users to be more satisfied. And again, we asked folks what they would actually like to see improved, the end users. Some do say they like the ability to chat with the live agent if possible, but it's really that ability to understand and provide a proper response. So we have a bunch of announcements today. A lot of them are related to customer service that Dennis is going to talk about later. We have our phrase clustering, where we can group messages together, whether you use an NLP or not, and it helps you identify where the NLP is breaking down with mishandled and unhandled intents. We have a lot of tools for goal and escalation tracking, so you can better track the user's journey through to satisfaction. And we even have a new plan for innovation teams. If there's innovation teams out there that want to get started, we have an easy way to onboard folks. I'm happy to talk with folks about that. But we're really excited about today. As Jesse mentioned, we have more than 40 speakers today from a great list of companies from Google, Amazon, the BBC. We have the NBA, Discovery Channel, Viacom, Rain, Airplay, Octane, a whole group of great speakers out there. That we couldn't do this without all the folks here. We also couldn't do it without the team. We're just a small team. There's only 11 of us. You'll see us in the shirts, so come find us if you have any questions. Lastly, we wouldn't be able to do this without our investors. We have a great group of investors who have supported us for the past 3 years. FFVC, Bessemer, Samsung, Bertelsmann, Scrum, Rembrandt, RGA, Recruit, and Runa. They've all been there for us, and many of them you'll hear from later today on the investor panel. We really appreciate all the support we've received from sponsors for helping make this happen. IBM, Samsung, Slack, Genesis, Keynote, and Take. We actually have we've launching an integration with Genesis that we're really excited about, and Dennis will talk about it a little bit later today too. So without further ado, we want to get kicked off and get started here.